In a major development that is already generating waves across the nation, $1,700 relief checks have officially been approved, marking one of the most significant financial support moves in recent years. Millions of American families struggling with the rising costs of living, mounting bills, and economic uncertainty are now looking forward to real assistance that could ease the pressure. This approval has been framed as a decisive step aimed at delivering immediate relief to households who have been waiting anxiously for concrete action. At the center of this announcement is former President Donald Trump, whose influence and advocacy are being credited with driving momentum for this relief package and ensuring that families see direct financial support. For months, there have been ongoing debates about the necessity of additional stimulus or relief checks, especially given the volatile state of the economy. Rising inflation, the cost of groceries, housing struggles, and the burden of healthcare expenses have all created an environment where working families have increasingly felt squeezed. This $1,700 relief check initiative is being seen as a direct response to those hardships, with the intention of offering breathing room for those caught in financial tight spots. For parents juggling rising childcare costs, for seniors worried about medical bills, and for workers whose paychecks haven't stretched as far as they used to, this payment represents more than just a number on paper. It represents hope and reassurance. Trump's role in this announcement has been portrayed as pivotal. Supporters argue that his vocal push for immediate assistance, his framing of relief as a matter of family survival, and his strong messaging about putting American households first all played a part in getting this measure over the line. His ability to rally attention and spotlight the issue, combined with the growing public demand for relief, is seen as a formula that ultimately pressured decision-makers to act. Trump himself has been quick to emphasize that this move is not about politics, but about delivering tangible results to families who have been left behind or overlooked by slow-moving bureaucracies. Whether one supports or opposes him politically, his influence on this development is difficult to ignore. The approval of these checks has sparked immediate reaction across the country. Families who have faced months of financial anxiety are expressing a mix of relief and cautious optimism. Many are already planning how they will use this money, whether to catch up on overdue rent, to cover winter utility bills, to buy groceries without cutting corners, or to prepare for unexpected expenses that have become all too common in recent years. For households living paycheck to paycheck, $1,700 can mean the difference between staying afloat and falling deeper into debt. Stories are already emerging from parents who say this will allow them to put food on the table, from students who will use the funds to stay enrolled in school, and from small business owners who will apply the relief toward keeping their doors open. At the same time, analysts are quick to note the broader implications. Economists caution that while direct checks provide essential short-term relief, they also raise questions about inflationary impact, long-term budget sustainability, and political precedent. Some critics argue that the checks are a temporary bandage on deeper structural issues that remain unresolved. However, others maintain that in times of immediate crisis, swift and direct relief is necessary, even if long-term solutions must still be developed. What is undeniable is the emotional and financial weight this decision carries for ordinary families who have been stretched to their limits. Trump has emphasized that this relief should be understood as a commitment to everyday Americans, not elites or corporations. His messaging frames this as a victory for families who too often feel abandoned by political leaders. In his remarks following the approval, he highlighted stories of parents, veterans, and seniors who stand to benefit, insisting that this relief will strengthen households and communities across the nation. By linking policy with personal impact, he has positioned himself once again as a champion for the working class. His ability to connect political action with the daily struggles of families remains a defining feature of his appeal. This announcement has also reignited debates within Washington, with lawmakers divided not only over the size and scope of the relief, but also over who should get credit. Some view the move as a bipartisan response to undeniable need, while others argue that Trump's influence overshadowed alternative proposals. Regardless of political framing, the fact remains that millions of families now have the prospect of meaningful assistance. The focus has shifted from partisan bickering to the question of how quickly these checks will be distributed and how effectively they will address urgent needs. Distribution logistics are now a central concern as families eagerly anticipate the arrival of these funds. The government has promised a streamlined process designed to minimize delays and ensure that checks reach households as quickly as possible. Direct deposits are expected to begin rolling out first, followed by paper checks for those without electronic banking information on file. Officials are working with banks and financial institutions to prevent bottlenecks, and early indications suggest that millions of families may begin seeing funds in their accounts within weeks. The urgency to move quickly is fueled not only by public demand, but also by the recognition that financial hardships often cannot wait. For many families, bills are due today, not tomorrow, and the difference between timely assistance and delayed distribution could mean eviction notices, utility shutoffs, or mounting late fees. While the logistics are being finalized, public discussion has shifted toward the symbolic significance of these relief checks. They are not merely financial transfers, they represent a recognition by political leaders that everyday Americans are struggling in tangible, painful ways. The $1,700 figure carries weight not only because of its immediate purchasing power, but also because of what it signals: a willingness to prioritize households in need over abstract political debates. Supporters argue that this demonstrates government responsiveness in a moment of crisis, while critics counter that it reflects a reactive, short-term strategy. Regardless of perspective, the approval has cut through partisan noise to spark widespread conversation in living rooms, workplaces, and community centers nationwide. The political landscape has also been reshaped by this decision. Trump's role in advocating for these checks has reinforced his image among supporters as a leader who delivers results. His emphasis on America First principles has been given fresh momentum by this tangible outcome. At rallies and in interviews, he has highlighted how these checks are not just numbers, but lifelines, and his base has responded enthusiastically. At the same time, opponents are grappling with how to frame their criticism. While some focus on the long-term fiscal consequences, others attempt to redirect attention toward systemic issues such as wage stagnation, housing policy, or healthcare reform. Yet it is clear that in the immediate moment, Trump has managed to position himself as a catalyst for relief in a way that resonates strongly with struggling families. The economic implications will continue to unfold in the coming months. Economists predict that the injection of $1,700 into millions of households could provide a temporary boost to consumer spending. Retailers may see increased sales, local businesses may experience a surge in customers, and families may finally have the breathing space to catch up on overdue bills. However, concerns linger about inflationary effects, with skeptics warning that additional cash in circulation could push prices higher. Policymakers are closely watching indicators to measure the balance between short-term relief and potential long-term challenges. Yet for families on the edge, those calculations feel distant compared to the pressing reality of putting food on the table or keeping a roof overhead. In communities across the nation, local leaders, churches, nonprofits, and neighborhood organizations are preparing to help families maximize the benefit of this relief. Financial advisors are encouraging households to use the money strategically, prioritizing essentials, paying down high-interest debt, or building small emergency funds. Some community centers are planning workshops to provide guidance on budgeting, while others are focused on ensuring that vulnerable populations, such as the elderly or disabled, are aware of their eligibility and able to access their checks without obstacles. This collective mobilization highlights the broader impact of relief beyond government policy. It is also about how communities come together to support one another in moments of need. Public sentiment, meanwhile, remains deeply personal. Parents talk about finally being able to buy their children winter clothing without sacrificing grocery money. College students express relief that they can cover tuition payments without taking on additional loans. Retirees breathe easier knowing they can pay for medications without skipping doses. These stories are more than anecdotes. They illustrate how policy decisions filter down into the day-to-day realities of ordinary Americans. Trump's narrative of delivering directly for families aligns with these personal accounts, reinforcing the perception that this relief is both timely and meaningful. Looking ahead, the approval of these $1,700 relief checks may serve as a blueprint for future policies. It demonstrates that when public pressure meets political will, swift action is possible. It also sets a precedent for how relief measures can be framed and delivered in a way that captures national attention. Whether or not this leads to additional rounds of assistance remains to be seen, but the conversation has undeniably shifted. Families now know that direct relief is possible, and they are likely to demand similar responsiveness when future challenges arise. Critics remain vocal, however, emphasizing that one-time checks cannot solve deeper economic inequalities. They point to systemic issues such as wage stagnation, housing shortages, and healthcare costs as problems that require sustained, structural solutions rather than temporary injections of cash. Yet even many of these critics acknowledge that for families living on the brink, immediate relief is non-negotiable. The tension between short-term needs and long-term reforms will continue to shape debates in Washington and beyond. As this relief effort rolls out, it is clear that the story is not only about economics or politics, it is about people. It is about the millions of families who will feel the tangible impact of $1,700 arriving at a moment when they need it most. It is about the sense of dignity and security that comes from knowing help is on the way. And it is about the broader message that leaders, when pressed, can act decisively to ease the burdens of their citizens. Trump's involvement has ensured that this moment carries not just financial weight, but political symbolism, reinforcing his ongoing influence in shaping national priorities. Whether celebrated as a victory or critiqued as a stopgap, the approval of these relief checks will be remembered as a defining chapter in the ongoing struggle to support American families in uncertain times.